The Old West was a dangerous place. Men of few words and wandering eyes were always looking for trouble. When the moon shone down on a dusty ranch, sometimes it uncovered secrets better left in the ground. Here's one such story of a solitary man and a lonely woman who found each other under a veil of mystery and danger. Buckle up, partner, because this is a tale that'll stick with you till the end. It was dusk in the dusty western town of Redemption. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the main street in a pool of orange light. The only sound, the creak of the saloon doors swinging in the evening breeze. Inside, the air was thick with cigar smoke and stale whiskey. At the bar stood a young woman named Clara Bell, her silhouette framed by the lamplight, her face half hidden in the shadows. Across from her sat an old-timer named Jeb, his weathered face etched with stories of the Wild West. He was known around town as the Keeper of Tales, the one who knew a thing or two about everything that happened in and around Redemption. And now he was sharing one such story with Clara, a warning that echoed through the ages. "Don't ride out past the ridge after dark, Miss Bell," he said, his voice raspy with age. "Least not unless you want to meet him." Clara stirred, her fingers tightening around her glass. She'd heard the name whispered in saloons and around campfires, a name that sent shivers down the spines of even the toughest cowboys. But she'd never met the man, nor had she ever seen his face. "Who are you talking about?" she asked, her voice as sweet and clear as a mountain stream. The old-timer leaned closer, his breath warm on her ear. "They say he lives out there beyond the whispering wind, a rancher. Best you stay away." And with that, he rose, his joints cracking like dry twigs, and ambled out into the night, leaving Clara bathed in the amber glow of the lamplight. Her gaze drifted to the open doors, and beyond them, the endless expanse of the prairie, where the wind sang its mournful song, and the stars glittered like diamonds scattered on velvet. Curiosity gnawed at her. Was this mysterious rancher? What had he done to earn such a reputation? And most importantly, why did everyone warn her away from him? Saddling her horse, she ignored the concerned glances of the townsfolk. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, she rode out of town, the wind whipping through her hair, carrying with it the scent of sagebrush and the distant moo of cattle. The trail was long and lonely, and the silence was broken only by the rhythmic clop of her horse's hooves on the hard-packed earth. As she approached the ridge, the darkness seemed to deepen, as if the night itself was holding its breath. Taking a deep breath, she urged her horse forward, her heart pounding in her chest like a drum. And then she saw it, silhouetted against the fading light, a ranch stark and brooding like a wounded animal. From the corner of her eye, she saw movement on the porch. A tall, rugged man emerged, his face hidden in the shadows. He stood there watching her approach, his form as still and silent as a stone statue. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough, like sandpaper on wood.
"What do you want?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady, though fear threatened to crack it.
"Who are you?" he replied, his gaze boring into her as if trying to see through her very soul. She could feel the weight of his stare, as though he were measuring her, assessing her worth. Before she could respond, he turned and disappeared back into the shadows of the house. She dismounted quickly, her hands trembling slightly as she secured her horse. Then she walked toward the porch, each step echoing in the stillness. As she climbed the steps, she could hear the slam of the door behind her, the sound reverberating in the sudden quiet. When she knocked again, her knuckles rapping against the weathered wood, she heard shuffling inside. Then the door opened, just enough to reveal a sliver of light. "What do you want?" the man asked again, his voice gruff and wary. "I was told to come here," she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I told to come see you." The man stepped aside, allowing her to enter without another word.
Out.
The door closed softly behind her, and she stood in the entryway, taking in the scene before her. The interior of the house was dimly lit, the windows boarded up, the furniture sparse and worn. But it was the faces on the wall that truly captivated her. Each photograph was faded and cracked, yet their eyes still shone through. And she saw a love story unfold before her, a family come to life. There was a woman with cascading red hair, her arms linked through those of a man whose eyes twinkled with mirth. Their children stood between them, their faces alight with innocent joy. But as she looked closer, she noticed something else, something hidden in plain sight. The man in the photographs bore the same rugged features as the rancher who had greeted her at the door, the same strong jaw, the same piercing blue eyes, the same haunted look in his gaze. The only difference was the absence of the deep frown lines that etched his forehead now, the ones that spoke of years of solitude and sorrow. And then she saw them, wedged between a rifle and a hat, two yellowed letters, their edges curling with age. She reached out and traced the faded ink, the words blurring beneath her fingertips. One was addressed to the rancher, his name a familiar melody to her ears. The other was from him, postmarked from a town she recognized as the one she had come from. Suddenly, she understood why the townsfolk had warned her, why the old-timer had spoken of him with bated breath. This wasn't just any rancher. This was Caleb Pierce, a legend in these parts. A man with a past as turbulent as the prairie winds and a heart as heavy as lead. For a moment, she saw the flicker of recognition in his eyes, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. But it vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving her with a sense of loss and the unanswered question, what had happened here? Why had this man closed himself off from the world? As she explored the cabin, she found more evidence of his story, each object weaving another thread into the tapestry of his life. She came across a battered Bible on a table, its pages filled with handwritten notes. Then she noticed the walls were lined with old rifles, each one a silent sentinel of a bygone era. Finally, she turned to the man, or rather the ghost, standing in the doorway. "Why do they call you dangerous?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. He didn't reply at first, his gaze fixed on some point beyond her. Then he turned, his eyes filled with a pain that mirrored her own. "Because I won't bend," he whispered, the words heavy with unspoken truths. "Because I won't forgive." She took a step closer, her heart aching for the torment etched on his face. "Is that all they see? The pain? The anger?" He looked away, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I fought for this land," he said, his voice cracking with emotion, "for my family. But in the end I lost both." He closed his eyes, as if reliving the agony of that moment. "They betrayed me, took everything I held dear, and left me with nothing but the ghosts of memories." His words hung in the air, heavy with sorrow. She could feel the despair emanating from him, the suffocating weight of his grief. It was a wound that ran deep, a scar that refused to heal. For a long moment neither of them spoke. The silence was deafening, broken only by the crackling of the fire. Finally, he continued, his voice barely a whisper. "So they say I'm cursed, that I bring nothing but sorrow and death, that I'm a shadow best avoided." She shook her head, her eyes filled with understanding. "Maybe they're wrong," she said softly. "Maybe you're just a man who's been alone too long." The rancher stared at her, his eyes searching hers as if looking for an answer that had eluded him for years. Then, so slowly, it was almost imperceptible, a flicker of hope touched his eyes, chasing away some of the shadows that had clung to them for so long. He stepped aside, gesturing for her to sit. In the chair, he poured her a cup of tea, his hands gnarled but gentle. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the fire casting dancing shadows on the walls, momentarily chasing away the darkness that had permeated this house for so many years. When she rose to leave, he stopped her with a gentle hand on her arm. He led her to the front door, and as they stepped outside, the first rays of dawn touched the prairie, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. They had expected her to run, to flee from the haunting presence that permeated this place. But she stayed, standing beside the rancher as if unafraid of the ghosts that whispered through the wind. When as the rancher and the woman stood side by side on the porch, the townsfolk knew they had witnessed something rare, sunrise shared between two souls who had found solace in each other's company. And so the legend of the lonely rancher continued, a tale whispered around campfires, a name that echoed through the ages. And that's all for today's story, folks. Did you enjoy it? If you did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more.